It is kind of cold out here, guys, I ain't gonna lie. Okay, here we go. Alright, cylinder 4. Here's the exciting one, the one that we're here to check out. Ooh boy. You'll probably notice that it sounded different this time than it did with the first 3, and I'll explain that in a second. But, as you can see there, 0 compression. The reason why it sounded different was because with these first 3 cylinders, I had compression. I had 120 psi compression in each one of these first 2, and then 108 compression in this one. So that means on the compression stroke, when the piston was coming up and all the valves were closed, it was meeting resistance, and the resistance was this gauge that's plugged into one of the cylinder holes. Well, as you seen right there, this last one, it didn't slow down. The first time when I was cranking it with the first 3 cylinders, it sounded kind of a little bit sluggish, but this time it sounded like a lot faster, and that's because it was going faster because it wasn't meeting any resistance whatsoever because I have 0 compression in there. Alright, so we're going to mark that as a 0, and we're going to pop this out real quick, and what we're going to do now is called a wet compression test after I write this down. 0. Okay, so now we're going to do a wet compression test. Now what a wet compression test is literally what it sounds like. Let me find my tube here. Here it is. So a wet compression test is the same thing that we just did, except for what we're going to do first is we're going to squirt some oil, some motor oil, regular motor oil, down into the cylinder, and then hook up our compression tester, and then do the compression test all over again. The reason why you do this is because if your leak is around the rings, your piston rings, then this will help seal that leak, and it also reduces the amount of space. I mean, we're only going to put 2 squirts of oil in there, but even that much will be enough to reduce the amount of space inside the cylinder to where we should have a higher compression pressure. So it's just another diagnostic aid. Now I'll try to do a little bit more later on to explain that better, but what we're going to do is I'm going to get a piece of just like fuel line and one of these little oil pumps, and I'm just going to kind of squirt oil until I have oil coming out the end of this fuel line. Okay, there we go, and I'm going to stick it down the cylinder hole, or the spark plug to cylinder hole. Okay. So we got some oil in there. And you actually want to stick it down in there past where the spark plug threads in. You want it in the cylinder so you know that you got that oil in there. Make sure that's good and tight and connected. Let's see what this does now. Nada, nothing. little tiny bit, maybe half of a third of a tenth of a psi. Yep, that's no compression in cylinder 4. So we're already getting some stuff figured out here. Down. Still 0 for our wet. Now on number 4. This is number 3. That seems to be right about the same place. So right about, well, it came up, it looks like about 2 psi. It looks like it's right on the 10 psi. Remember earlier it was between the 5 and the 105 and 110. Alright. And then we would carry this on, so on and so forth. I'm not going to bore you with all that, but the bottom line is the moral of this story today is how to do a compression check. Get a towel here. The reason why we did this compression check was because we was having an engine misfire. They had already changed the spark plugs, the spark plug wires. I think he said he'd done some work with the distributor. And so if you're having an engine misfire, the very first place you want to go to is spark plugs and wires. It's the very first thing you want to change because it's the cheapest thing, and it's usually the thing that wears out, especially in a car that's got 120 and 130,000 miles on it. Really, these things, spark plugs and wires, should be changed out at about 40,000 miles. So that tells me, and that's why I went, and he had already done that, and that's why I went straight to doing this compression test to see what was going on. So we definitely have a problem with cylinder 4. So with it not having any compression whatsoever, we can narrow this problem down to one of a few things. We got to figure out which one it is next, but we can narrow it down to these things. It's either something wrong with the valves, got bad valves, a blown head gasket, or messed up piston rings, bad piston rings. Okay, so each cylinder has 4 valves, so there's 4 valves in there and valve seats that could be bad. You could just, I could just have a tore up valve in there. It could be the piston rings around the piston that are wore out, or it could be a blown head gasket. Now I don't believe it's a blown head gasket. I don't see any this head gasket looks pretty good. I don't see any evidence of a head gasket leak, but that doesn't mean anything. There's something else we can do real quick. Check that. The next logical thing to do, I don't have the tool to do this, but the next logical thing to do would be a leak down test, which is a different kind of tool. It's just like a compression tester, but it's got something on the end of it. It's got a pressure gauge on it, and you hook it up to an air compressor, and it literally pumps air in there, and it tells you how much air you're losing, and it shows you in a range of good to bad, which you don't want to be losing too much of anything. So I'm probably going to go get a compression tester. The next step for this is to, or not a compression tester, a leak down tester. So that's the next step here. I want to do my best to diagnose this problem before I go tearing it all apart. But like I said, this is a project car, so I'm probably going to be rebuilding the engine anyways, just simply because I want to have that reliability. Because when you're doing rally car racing, you know, you're out in the backwoods somewhere, and there's times that you have to drive to your different stages, and like if I got to drive 40 minutes one way to one stage and all of a sudden my car breaks down, I got to get towed back to service park, I mean, that's going to suck, you know. So that's where we're at with it right now. The next step is going to be trying to narrow down which one of those three things, valves, piston rings, or head gasket, which one of those it could be. So probably go tomorrow and get the tool that I need to do that, and we'll do a video about diagnosing this cylinder head, this no compression status in this cylinder.